I'm Agishdanov reporting from the Donbass, RT.
Russia has suspended its participation in the New START nuclear treaty, but is not departing from the agreement. That's what Vladimir Putin said earlier in his annual address to the national parliament.
Through NATO representatives, the U.S. is sending signals and putting out ultimatums to Russia. They say you, Russia, must implicitly do as we have previously agreed to, including the New START treaty, while we, the U.S., will do whatever we want to. They say there's no connection between the New START treaty issues and the Ukrainian conflict or other hostile actions by the West towards Russia. As if there's no loud statements that the U.S. aim is defeating Russia strategically. So it's either utmost cynicism and hypocrisy or utmost stupidity. We can't call them idiots, though. They're not stupid. They want to defeat us strategically and also want to continue to inspect our nuclear objects. In this regard, I have to say that Russia is forced to suspend our involvement in the New START treaty.
The suspension of the treaty can be reversed, according to the Russian Foreign Ministry. Moscow says that U.S. de-escalation in its aggressive stance would, quote, create the conditions for the pact to fully function. Russia also states it still intends to follow the timeline on weapons reductions set out in the bilateral agreement, but that checks on stockpiles would not be allowed. A reminder, New START, a nuclear limitation pact between Moscow and Washington, was signed in 2010 and is set to expire in 3 years. The treaty sets curbs on both countries' strategic arsenals and includes on-site inspections to verify compliance. Russia's move to suspend its participation came after Vladimir Putin accused the West of being involved in attacks on Russian strategic air bases.
We know that the West is directly complicit in Kiev regime's attempts to strike the bases of our strategic aviation. Drones used for that were equipped and modernized with the help of NATO specialists. Western elites cannot ignore the fact that it is impossible to defeat Russia on the battlefield. They intend to transform a local conflict into a phase of global confrontation. This is exactly how we understand this, and we will respond accordingly.
The president's speech went on for almost 2 hours, an hour 45 minutes. It was given before the cream of Russia's elite. The biggest revelation was left until almost the end, and that is Russia suspending its participation. Very important distinction. Not pulling out of, but rather suspending its participation in the START nuclear arms reduction and control treaty between it and the United States that has been in effect since 2010. Vladimir Putin here cited various reasons for it, and that primarily, or one of the most important reasons, is that it has simply lost power. For example, Russian inspections, which are written into the START treaty, Russian inspectors are denied inspections in the United States for all manner of reasons. There is also the fact that the United States, various Western leaders have now come out and they say that they want Russia to suffer a strategic defeat in Ukraine. The president has ordered the Ministry of Defense to prepare to carry out nuclear tests, but only if the United States carries those out first. The gist of what he had to say is that relations with the West are now have been torn to shreds. There is nothing to stand on, and that Russia sees through all of this high talk about democracy and peace.
No country in the world has as many military bases abroad as the United States does. There are hundreds of them, and I want to emphasize this, hundreds of bases around the world. The whole planet is stacked with them. Just look at the map. No one counts the human victims and tragedies because trillions of dollars are at stake. The opportunity to further rob everyone, hiding behind words about democracy and freedom.
The Russian president also stressed that Russia did everything that it could to avoid this conflict, the special military operation in Ukraine, but that for years, European NATO leaders as well as the government in Kiev, which Vladimir Putin believes to be fully controlled by NATO. These leaders lied to Russia for years. They lied and they stalled about Ukraine's peaceful intent, their peaceful intent. They spent those years pumping weapons into Ukraine.
I would like to emphasize that even before the special military operation, Kiev was negotiating with the West on delivery of air defense systems, planes, and other heavy equipment. We also remember attempts by the Kiev regime to acquire nuclear weapons, and they were stating it publicly. The U.S. and NATO were rapidly deploying their military bases and secret biolabs near our borders. During their maneuvers, they explored the theater of future military actions. And they prepared the Kiev regime that was controlled by them, Ukraine that was enslaved by them, for a big war. And now they are admitting it publicly, openly, and with no shame.
He also says that various nationalist leaders, neo-Nazis, were trained in Western military colleges, were taught how to wage war against the Russian Federation, all with the understanding that this war would happen. And that has been the Western plan all along. Vladimir Putin also said that this conflict between Russia and Ukraine isn't between Russia and the people of Ukraine, but rather those that have taken it hostage, and any further increase in the number of civilians killed in the devastation.
We are not at war with the people of Ukraine. I have already said this many times. The people of Ukraine themselves have become hostages of the Kiev regime and its Western masters, who've actually occupied the country in a political, military, and economic sense. No one thought about the people. They were prepared for slaughter and eventually turned into expendable material. The responsibility for inciting the Ukrainian conflict, for the escalation, for the increase in the number of its victims, lies entirely with the Western elites and the Kiev regime.
He also said that the sanctions which the West believed would shatter the Russian economy, that didn't pan out, that the Russian economy remains strong.
The West has deployed not only a military, informational, but also an economic front against us. But nowhere has it achieved anything and will not achieve anything. Anti-Russian sanctions are a means for their goal, as the Western leaders themselves declare, a direct quote, to make our citizens suffer. That's their humanism.
The president said again that victory or Russia's future is dependent on the actions of every single person. And he also says that it is our historic obligation to see this through.
Just hours after Vladimir Putin's address, the U.S. president made a key speech following a meeting with his Polish counterpart in Warsaw. Joe Biden said the West had not plotted to try and dominate Russia.
The United States and the nations of Europe do not seek to control or destroy Russia. The West was not plotting to attack Russia, as Putin said today. President Putin chose this war. Every day the war continues is his choice. He could end the war with a word. It's simple. If Ukraine stopped defending itself against Russia, it would be the end of Ukraine. All across my country, in big cities and small towns, Ukrainian flags fly from American homes. Over the past year, Democrats and Republicans in our United States Congress have come together to stand for freedom. That's who Americans are, and that's what Americans do.
Biden's statement came during his visit to the Polish capital on Tuesday, where he stressed the importance of collective European security and that NATO is, quote, stronger than ever. He's set to meet officials from other member states of the alliance later. It follows the American leader's surprise trip to Kiev on Monday, where he talked and walked with President Zelensky while air raid sirens were heard ringing out across the city, despite no shelling in the Ukrainian capital. As Biden reassured Kiev that the U.S. would support Ukraine using all means, back at home, his country faces its own troubles. The state of Ohio saw a major blast at a metal plant. That's amid an already escalating chemical catastrophe after a train carrying toxic substances derailed in the state 2 weeks ago, resulting in serious concerns over environmental damage. And Biden has neither visited the site nor declared a state of emergency. It's no wonder many were not impressed with his Kiev visit, with a number of Republican politicians and the East Palestine mayor himself questioning the fact Biden preferred Kiev over America on President's Day in the U.S.
You saw President Joe Biden over in Ukraine. Did that make you feel slighted in any way?
That was the biggest slap in the face. That tells you right now he doesn't care about us. So
agreed.
He can send every agency he wants to, but I found that out this morning in one of the briefings that he was in the Ukraine giving millions of dollars away to people over there, not to us, and I'm furious.
This is incredibly insulting. Today, on our